Hi guys, it's Moa aka Swedish Whiskey Girl, and I'm so excited to try what I have in front of me today. So when I saw that the Whiskey Exchange are doing virtual tastings, of course I got very intrigued, especially by this warm distillery. So I have never tried anything from the distillery Milk and Honey, which is located in Tel Aviv in Israel, but now I have 5 different products from them in front of me and I can't wait to try them. So this distillery, Milk and Honey, is of course the first distillery in Israel, and it's quite interesting. I listened to the tasting with the guys from Milk and Honey and they spoke about so many interesting things. So for one thing, it's the first kosher distillery in the world, which means that when they use wine cask and cognac cask, for example, they have to use kosher vineyards, and they also don't work on weekends or on Israeli holidays, so that's quite interesting. And they do of course have a really hot climate where they are, which affects the angel share quite a lot. And I think in some places they said that they even have an angel share of up to 25%, which is quite detrimental. But they also explained that in Israel they have 5 different climate zones, so you can definitely vary if you're going to the mountains where you have a colder climate, or if you go, for example, to the Dead Sea where it's really hot. And because of this hotter climate, they tend to do a high cut when they cut their spirit, just so they have more alcohol to kind of lose to the angels. But they said that during the summer they tend to lose more alcohol because it's so humid, but in the winter it's a bit more dry, so you can actually lose a bit more water. It's the brilliant Jim Swan who's been to the distillery to help out as well, which means that they use some STR cask, which is shaved, toasted and recharred, which is kind of what he's known for. They tend to be casks that work really well in hotter climates, which you'll for example see with Kavalan. And of course they don't do any temperature control to their warehouses, because they are going by the same rules as you would if you're making a Scotch whiskey, meaning you have to mature for at least 3 years and that you can't do anything to control the temperatures in your warehouses, which is very interesting for such a hot climate. But yeah, let's get to tasting. So the first one we're going to try is the Noumic Spirit. It sits at 40% ABV, and they said that because their line arm is going down quite a lot, I think they said 40 degrees angle, they get quite an oily spirit, but still quite fruity, so it's going to be very interesting to see. And they did say that they use barley that they ship over from England, but if they use peated barley, which they use 2 weeks every year, then they use peated barley from the Czech Republic. It definitely has that lovely fresh Noumic-y vibe that I'm starting to love more and more, which is really wonderful. Quite fruity, like pear drops and a bit of kind of lemon zest in there. Quite light and easygoing. Like I said, this is at 40% ABV. They actually had some problem with a lot of sediments in their Noumic, because they do have bottled this, and especially in colder climates they tend to get that kind of sediment, so they've changed it, so now it's bottled at 50% ABV. Let's have a taste. Slanjava. Yeah, a nice Noumic. It's has this lovely kind of candy notes of sweetness. Definitely has that Noumic vibe of unmatured spirits, but still quite very smooth and easygoing. I could definitely drink this the way it is. It's interesting because it doesn't really have any sharp edges. But yeah, fruity and light, I would say. Very interesting. I wouldn't say it's too oily. It has a nice mouthfeel, but it's quite a light one. So it will be interesting to see what some maturation time does to it. The next one we're going to try sits at 46% ABV. It's their Young Spirit. I believe in the UK it's bottled as Young Malt Spirit. It's not really old enough to be called whiskey yet. It's only 1 year old. It's a combination of 3 different cask types. So it's, I believe, 75% ex-bourbon. It is 10% Ex-Islay casks, and then the rest is STR red wine casks. And the Ex-Islay cask is quite interesting because he said that the 2 distilleries he tends to prefer to use is Ex-Laphroaig and Ex-Ardbeg casks, and he said from the Laphroaig cask you get a bit more of a peaty, smoky flavour, and from the Ardbeg cask you actually get more of a fruity flavour. So it's going to be very interesting to try. Let's have a look on the nose. Very interesting. It smells a bit like the inside of a refrigerator. There's so many different things coming. A bit of cucumber. Weird. Definitely kind of an earthy note. And some exotic sweetness. It's like honey and cucumber. Weird. Let's have a taste. Slangela. It's quite hot. It's in the same way as like a chili can be hot. It's quite like prickly in your mouth. Definitely all kind of earth notes. Very interesting. Yeah, that kind of oak bitterness. A lot of kind of leather and earth with an underlying kind of fruity character. It definitely does not feel as smooth and light as the first one. I think all of those casks in just a year has gotten it so much kind of weight to it. The second sip is getting me more kind of exotic spice and some really interesting fruitiness. But what is that kind of fruitiness? I do think it's kind of a green fruitiness, along with that kind of leathery, earthy notes and a bit of exotic spice. Curious, a lot of flavour for only being aged 1 year. And we're going to move on to their whiskey, which is the Classic. It's also bottled at 46% ABV. So let's have a nose. Interesting. This is almost a bit more kind of peachy. Still quite tropical, like peaches and a bit of kind of hay. Still quite, it feels like it would be higher than 46 on the nose. It just gets me kind of a... It does give me flavour, but it doesn't give me too much. It kind of gives me a few different things, but not overwhelmingly a lot of different aromas. Let's have a taste. Slangela. Oh, this has calmed down a bit compared to the other one. Still has this kind of lovely leather earthy notes, but they're quite tuned down, just like as you turn down the volume on them slightly. I still feel like you get that kind of fresh, tropical, like almost peachy sweetness, along with kind of exotic spices. What's interesting is not as powerful as some hot climate whiskies are. So quite light and easygoing. Almost would guess that it would be a Scotch. Interesting. It does have this kind of lovely fruity finish though. Interesting. It's just a little bit different. It's almost like when you walk into a woodwork shop on the nose. Yeah, definitely that really fresh oak or really fresh wood. But let's move on to the next one, which is it's part of their Element series. So they're doing, like, they've used 50% of their Classic, which is the one we just tried, and then they use 50% from another cask, which is like another element of a cask that comes into show. This here is a sherry element, so they've used both Oloroso and PX, and it's both from Hogsheads and Butts. So 50% of the sherry element, and then 50% of their Classic. So let's have a nose. Oh, that is curious. It's a bit like marshmallows. So floral and like, it's like a mixture between a candy shop and a perfume shop. There's something about that kind of artificial candy notes. Quite light and quite like very enjoyable. It makes me feel like I was in a film or a dream, where you step into this kind of old fashioned vintage kind of candy shop, and then there's a perfume shop next door, so everything just smells quite powdery and candied. A bit of that raisin sweetness as well. Well, let's have a taste. Slangela. It's definitely more like what you would expect from a sherried whiskey on the palate. Still that kind of powdery candy notes, but also with that kind of raisin notes and dried plums almost. Very rich and enjoyable. Yeah, that's lovely if you like sherry whiskies. So the next one we're going to try, I'm super excited about because it's a white wine finished whiskey. It's a cask sample, so it's going to be very, very interesting to see what this is like. It does smell like something that reminds me of something. It does have like a slight vegetal note. It makes me think of tomatoes. I'm not really sure why. But it does have this kind of lovely, soft, like white fruitiness. So like slight melon or slight like the skin of a grape, the flesh of a grape. Quite easygoing and light. Might be because I know it's a white wine cask maturation. And of course this white wine is Israeli Chardonnay. Let's have a taste. Slangeva. They're quite hot, like it does have this kind of chili note on the front of your tongue. It's a slight vegetal note, but quite fresh. And still that kind of grape note. And a bit of that honeydew sweetness. Interesting. I'm very fascinated by white wine maturation at the moment because you see it in some places, but you don't see it a lot, so I'm quite curious about why. Very, very interesting. But we are going to move on to our final whiskey, which is one I've been so curious about. As you all might already know, I love quirky whiskies, and this here has been a pomegranate cask. And I didn't even know this beforehand, but there's different types of pomegranate wine, which is quite typical to Israel because they do eat a lot of pomegranates there. You can make a fortified wine out of pomegranates, so you can make a dry red wine style of wine, you can make like a rosé style of wine from it, so very interesting. This one here has that kind of dry red wine style, so it's going to be very interesting. This has also been matured by the Dead Sea, which is one of the lowest places on earth. It sits at about 400 meters below sea level and it's really, really hot. These casks sit at the roof of a hotel, so it's going to be super interesting to try this one. I might be fooled that I know what it is, but it does have a bit of a pomegranate vibe. But I think if you gave this to me blind, I would probably guess it's some sort of red wine influence. Because it has that kind of strawberry, almost raspberry, because raspberries to me are a bit more nature, and strawberries, they're a bit more sweetness. So more that kind of raspberry note. Slightly vegetal, like you're out walking somewhere and there's a really well-smelling bush. Or a well-smelling hedge, maybe it's better. Let's have a taste. Slangeva. Well, I'm so surprised by how smooth this is. Definitely has a kind of hot climate taste, where you get like a slight bitterness. But this is more like a tea bitterness, but it would be like an exotic tea bitterness. So I guess if you made a tea with pomegranate flavours, that kind of bitterness. It's very, very smooth, if that makes sense, but it's not as hot as the other ones. Very interesting. It does have those kind of berry notes, like the raspberry. Oh, this is so nice. It has those kind of tannins and the dry notes that you would expect from a wine cask. And I'm so intrigued to find out more about that pomegranate wine. It would be so interesting to try it next to this, as well as trying the Israeli Chardonnay next to the white wine matured whiskey. I can't wait to see more of this. It's I think if you have the chance to be a craft distillery, and especially when you're starting out somewhere like Israel where you don't really have any rules for whiskey, doing something like this where you take your own culture and your own kind of everyday life and incorporate it into whiskey, that's for me something that you would like. It's art. To me, it's so interesting to experiment this way with flavor. Yeah, raspberry pomegranate, and it has a bit of a hot note, but it's not at all much. This actually has been matured for 1 year and 6 months, and for that time I don't think this tastes that aged at all. But of course that hot climate will influence it and really bring out flavour from the casks, and I think with something like a pomegranate cask, I think it suits that kind of hot climate vibe. Like you want a bit of tannins, you want a bit of bitterness alongside those kind of smooth berry notes or pomegranate notes. Yeah, it's well done, and I want to see more of this. I would of course love to hear if you have tried anything from Milk and Honey, any Israeli whiskey. Perhaps you have tried one that I haven't tried that you would like to recommend to me. So please put that in the comments below. And of course, if you've liked this video, feel free to give us a little thumbs up, as well as subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the lovely and wonderful contents I have coming up. And I also have now launched a Patreon, so if you're interested in seeing some sneak peeks or behind the scenes or exclusive content, feel free to check out that link. It's also here below. But as always, hope you'll have a lovely day. Slanjava. Skål!